Okay, welcome to everyone again at Seven Community, a program of the Seven Foundation done in partnership with PhotoWings. And I'm very happy to welcome again John Stanmeyer for the second time with us in this continuing education series. We've been together in December, I think, 2023, when we discussed grants with together with Anush. And today we invited you to talk about how can photography promote change. So you entitled your lecture, "How can photography promote kind of changing global consciousness?" And I think for us, it's really interesting to hear from you because you've done so many stories on the impact of photography on local communities. How can it tell stories of this kind of collective experience we're having, and how can you promote change and expose topics such as social injustice, promote human rights? How can we raise awareness on certain topics? So we're very happy, John, to have you again as a lecturer in Seven Community. Welcome.
Thank you, Nika, and thank you to everyone who's here. I can't see anyone, so I feel like I'm just talking to myself, but I'll talk to you, Nika. It's a Today I want to give not so much about myself, though I guess that's what part of it will be that way because it is about the photography that I do. But to go into the conscious mind, to be more conscious on the stories that we do, to be more in tuned, in union with the topics that we work on. Because I'm quite bored with photography these days. I'm bored by what I'm seeing. It's the same approach over and over and over, and every period of existence, whether it was, I was reading a story today in the New York Times about the new Egyptian museum in Giza, and I thought, wow, what a reminder of how magnificent the Egyptian period was 3,000, 4,000 years ago. But still, there's evolutions that evolve, and those evolutions are often connected to a state of awareness, and a state of awareness to an awakening, to a state of awakening that is to become more conscious. And photography feels that way. Cooking is that way. I would say clothes making is that way. Banking is that way. You could be a fruit vendor and come to a greater awareness of how not only maybe you're selling the fruit, but if you're a farmer, onto becoming more conscious on how you grow the fruit, so that we manifest not necessarily a new apple, because that would be sort of blending seeds and grafting and things like that, but to make the apple that is known even more magnificent, more awakening to our senses. So everything in life it connects to a state of awareness, to a state of consciousness. And in this madness of our collective humanity, I'm photographing, all of us are, and those of you, I don't know what point of existence you are in this life at this moment where you are in this thing called photography. There is no such thing as time. There's no such thing as age. There's no such thing as anything other than this moment. And in this moment is a moment to become aware further in the understanding of ourselves, and in turn, a greater awareness for our collective humanity. Everything that happened even a minute ago, we've been on here for I don't know how long, a minute or two. The past is done. It's technically dead. It never existed. Every second in front of us does not exist until that moment of now, and now is that moment now, and only in that presence I found, and I don't think I'm the only one, that we become more in union with not only ourselves, but the world and the universe, excuse me, around us. So this time with you here, or these moments with you here, really, I want to go into the consciousness approach of this thing we call photography. And really, in many ways, I'm not interested in talking about photography. Photography, talking about it is absolutely boring. I'd rather talk about life and how you have this place in this existence, and what you're going to do in this moment of existence. I'm going to preface something here that maybe some of you may not like, but it's really beautiful and it's powerful, and it's really the vibration of our collective existence. Everyone here, and of which I can't see anybody but Nika, and myself, and my two dogs, and Annie over here, we are all going to die. We are all going to give our bodies back. And what are you going to do in this existence that you have for the greaterment of our collective humanity and for the betterment of yourself? And again, this is an exact parallel, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're a pharmacist, or whether you're a frisbee maker. How do you stretch the frisbee into a new dimension of understanding and being? And so what I want to share with you, I guess on a personal level, and I'm willing to be vulnerable to all of you, is my own unconsciousness to a continuing desire and stretching to become even more conscious. So I will press this present button, and I have no idea if you're seeing this.
No, it's not presenting, so maybe you will need to share again.
I'm doing it.
Um,
What do I do?
no,
Share.
I'm not seeing your
Hold on.
screen yet.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And then I touch it. This is
In
so
the
different.
in the meantime, yeah, in the meantime, I'll just say
Do
to
you see it?
everyone that yes, now we're getting there. Now we see ourselves in a reflection. I'll add it to the stage,
Oh, I
but I'll
love this
just
totally crazy reflection. It's like one of these infinite mirrors that you see in a movie or like a carnival house. Does everybody get to see this?
they do.
Oh, wow. Hey,
Um,
look at my hands. Look at that. Wow. And it's like going infinite into the infinite. Oh, that's really cool. Okay. What
but
happens
I'll
now?
just before. Well, now you just need to do the keynote.
Oh, that's what I do. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
so mesmerized by this by this thing. Okay. So
I'll just,
I'm going to be completely vulnerable from the beginning of my existence. I was this fellow human being who happened to be in this life to be a boy, and still am, who kind of never understood anything, probably never fit in, but that's not unusual for all of us, and was never knowing what I wanted or what I was here really to do in this life. I fell into photography, literally falling into it, through the recommendation of a friend of mine who was a painter, an artist, an illustrator, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to art school. Do you want to join me?" And I was, I don't know, 17, 18, and I'm like, "Well, I do paint and I do draw, and what else do they teach?" This friend of mine, a very kind guy named Alex, was a bit competitive, so I was like, I don't know if I want to do something. I'm not into competitive nature of anything. And I said, what else do they teach at this art school? And he said, oh, interior design and fashion merchandising and fashion illustration and photography and art design. I'm like, photography? I just bought a used camera at a pawn shop. I'll take photography. And that is in sincerity how this all began. And so I really knew nothing. I wasn't in the high school yearbook committee. My father had a camera, and I fiddled with it sometimes, but there was no. I wasn't like some of my colleagues at Seven and elsewhere, like, oh, I always wanted to be a photographer. I knew it from the beginning. I knew nothing. And really, that I'm going to mention that a few times, that the power of I do not know is incredible. And now when I think about it, this I do not know at that time in my existence is probably why I do this thing called photography. So in art school, I really was most fascinated by everything. This is a self-portrait for a project that we had to do, and I ripped up the carpets of the apartment that I was renting, got into a lot of trouble with the landlord, uh, and painted it all white and would photograph myself in it and other things. I had 3 semesters of photojournalism, and here's where it gets more strange. I failed all 3 semesters of photojournalism because the photographers, the instructors, the teachers, whatever you want to call them, didn't inspire me. This was also at a point of my life where we're going to talk about consciousness, that I was unconscious. I was lost in my mind, and it was a beautiful thing, and I have no regrets. It was quite torturous and tormenting, completely self-destructive in many ways. But in art school, I failed all aspects of photojournalism, and because I wasn't awakened, and I was more interested in design and concepts, what was in my mind. We had an assignment with this amazing photographer named Howard Sweet. I have a portrait of him on the wall over here still that he gave me. And assignment was to go photograph a chair. And gosh, if I ever taught photography on an academic level, I teach photo workshops, but maybe I should do this in one of the workshops. So I just was fascinated, like, to photograph a chair, amazing. I just was completely elated about it. So I decided to make a full-size crucifix and crucify the chair, photographing it day and night. But what ended up being my most intriguing aspect of art school was the art and fashion universe. And so I graduated or finished art school with a major in fashion photography and a minor in art. And I moved to Europe immediately after art school and moved to Milan. And I went through the normal giving difficult phase. I don't really think it's that difficult, but it is. But it's a needed, I think, torment of struggling. We romanticize artists who struggle. We romanticize Van Gogh for his torment in life, and epic painter, epic artist. But I learn now in this existence that I'm at, and I think for all of us, that I'd rather be blissful than in torment. And so it was a difficult beginning, and then finally, I don't know, maybe 2 years later, I started to work for Italian Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, and I was maybe 21, 22 years old. I remember I had a photo agent called Giorgio Raposi, who repped major fashion photographers, and I was 21 years old and in the hallowed halls of the most epic art and fashion photographers. And at the time, the art director of Interview magazine, that was founded and owned by Andy Warhol, was in Milan. And he happened to be in the office when I was showing my book, and he said, "Oh, I really like what you're doing. I want to hire you." So I made a number of trips to New York and elsewhere, working for Interview magazine as well. And as limitless as it was also incredibly self-destructive for me. Everyone is different. I loved and gave, and still to this day, give to the endlessness of my imagination, and manifesting that. But at that moment, I was realizing I wasn't in tune and in union with the incredibleness all around me. I was involved in the mind space of self. I would photograph, people, models, whatever you want to call them, with the designer's clothing, and I'm like, I don't like the shirt. I'm going to wrap this person in toilet paper and just highlight your pants. And they would let me do anything I wanted to do. It was brilliant and limitlessly creative. But and then I would work with mirrors. I would break mirrors. I did a trip to Tunisia over the holidays years ago, and was mesmerized by mirrors suddenly, and suddenly realized that I could, in one piece of film, this is film, this isn't digital, no manipulation, I could have people floating and flying and splitting their heads and putting them inside and out. And it was absolute visual rapture, but it was also so self. And it was at that trip, ironically, in Tunisia, that I began to take notice of the humanity around me. And in art school, I think what caused this essence of the mind to manifest far more than anything else was nobody had inspired me or guided me or shepherded me to the enormous art and power of everything around me, everything around you and I, everything around us. So it was the constant manifestation of the mind and the madness of the mind and the love of the mind and the giving of the mind that was brilliant. But I began to feel it was very self-oriented, and it became too easy. Here's just an example of where I in one frame have be able to move people's bodies and shift them using mirrors. This is the context sheet. I don't know where the actual frame is, but everything was done in camera. Here's another contact sheet on a medium format camera, and it was becoming quite destructive of my mind, let's just say. The lifestyle, this point now, maybe 22, flying to New York regularly, hanging out with Andy Warhol and Giorgio Armani, and like the party scene. I was killing myself, and probably would not be here if I was continuing in that realm. And then I began to notice that everything that I photographed was like a story. The clothing designers and the magazines would let me do anything that I want, which was brilliant. But there was always the sadness and almost misery in my photography at that time. And I began to realize that I was photographing myself. People would be crying. I'd make people cry. I'd rip clothing, and nobody seemed to complain about it. And constantly screaming. This was a designer that did underwear, and I just decided to do whatever the hell I wanted. And I wasn't awakened. I wasn't conscious. And then I left everything in Milan after 4 years and moved to Spain, moved to Madrid, and didn't do anything. I wrote, I read, did a little bit of this thing called street photography. And sorry, this is really, it's not me. It's a model for a clothing designer. But it was at this moment that I met a group of Peace Corps volunteers in the United States. If any of you are from this strange country that I'm presently living in, there's a entity of the government that funds, probably this present president is going to cut the funding for this too, but this sort of charity and community organization that does aid work around the world called the Peace Corps. And I met these Peace Corps volunteers from Haiti, and I was completely moved by these two women. And they were doing sanitation. And I had this massive awakening, one of many, where I thought, I want to do what you're doing. I want to make latrines. I want to make toilets for people. And I moved back to the United States, applied for the Peace Corps, and was rejected because at the time, they only wanted people who were engineers, teachers, people who really knew how to build toilets, which I had no idea how to build a toilet, but I was absolutely giddy to learn. And I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. And for a year later, I bought an old sailboat, this old beat up sailboat, like a 35-meter twin-masted 70-year-old wooden sailboat. And I just wanted to vanish on this boat. And another series of events, which I won't go into detail or will take too long, I had an awakening that I still had these cameras, and if I couldn't dig latrines for the Peace Corps, I was going to use these cameras to dig latrines. And that was another moment of conscious awakening, that as much as that past life was incredibly limitlessly creative, and that was the beauty of it and still is. I knew nothing of Cartier-Bresson. I had no idea who he was. Robert Capa. I didn't even understand anything about my friend Jim Noctway in the sense of who others in our profession thought who he was. I was on contract with Time magazine, and so was he. And I met him many times, and I really didn't know anything about him too much, other than I thought, oh, this is a human being who's deeply committed in what they're doing, as we all should be. My influences were Helmut Newton and Arthur Elgort and Peter Lindbergh, Albert Watson, and Paolo Roversi. So I, to this day, don't even reference, if I reference anything, that of colleagues or those in this thing we call photojournalism. I'm still connected in the spirit sense to those in a whole other department of this thing called photography. So I took a job at a newspaper, and after I had to learn photojournalism, I had to learn ethics. So I worked at a newspaper in Florida for about 6 years, and because I was in the magazine world, sorry, I'll stay here before we jump so fast. Because I had always been in the magazine universe, and because I never really worked for anybody, the only time I ever worked for someone was at this newspaper. I just accepted it and knew I wasn't going to be there forever. And moved to Asia, joined a photo agency that still exists but under a different name, Saba Photos, which now is Redux. And I moved to Asia, and within a year, I was on contract with Time magazine, covering every major story in Asia and other parts of the world for about a decade. And the Time years were all heavy news, really the digging of latrines that I felt that were so needed that I could play a role in. War and conflict. This is during the Asian economic crisis in Indonesia. And here I go from this whole other world into, totally other aspect of this thing called photography. But even here, I was already beginning to feel that, am I adding to the narrative? Am I adding a sense of consciousness by witnessing the madness of a human being? I can't move my mouse, but the police officer behind him, or the military officer behind him, about to beat the shit out of this guy who's so scared he urinated his pants. Am I doing enough? And viciousness of car bombs and destruction and death, and we need to see this. The massacres of people. This is in East Timor during the fight for independence. The culture of guns are everywhere. at the time. This is the killing of Joaquim Bernardino Guterres the day before the vote for independence. It was the first time that after decades of human rights atrocities by the Indonesian military, that it had ever been filmed that this, I can't move my mouse, but the gentleman behind is about to put an AK-47 down to the back of Joaquim's head. Joaquim looks back. He's just barefoot carrying flip-flops and a rock, stares at his killer, and is shot in the back of the head. And did a lot of work on mental health around the world, specifically for this story for Time Magazine in Asia. This was a mental health ward in Pakistan, children neglected and forgotten, and in Afghanistan after the Taliban left, in Indonesia, where there's only at the time $1 a day budget to feed and house hundreds of inmates. In China, the first time the non-Chinese media got into the mental health system in mainland China. Factory laborers who lost their arms for the equipment and toys and computers and whatnot that we want to have around the world. We want them cheap. And how do you get things so cheap? And we're dealing with this now with trade tariffs all around the planet. Well, you get it cheap because people are working for nothing, and when they are abused, or in this case, lose their arms while manufacturing computers, they have no recourse. The demonstrations to right after the events that took place in New York City on September 11th, and the anti-U.S. protest. And all of us, there were hundreds of us stuck in Pakistan because it was the first conflict we couldn't just cross a border into, and it was ridiculously dangerous to deal with the Taliban. So hundreds of us were in Pakistan covering the war for the first month. Afghan brick makers why are they there? Because they make bricks even cheaper than the Pakistanis who do it. And how do you do that? By abusing labor, so much so that children as young as 4 and 5 still to this day work in brick factories, in this case because they're light enough to be able to walk on the top of almost dried bricks to turn them over to be in the sun. And I kept thinking, and I can show you images of the war, of many conflicts and wars. This is sort of, and maybe this again connects to my evolutionary upbringing in this aspect of photography. Instead of showing you dead bodies, and I can show you layered images of dead bodies, but that doesn't solve anything. This is the moment when the coalition forces, funny name, US, French, British, the moment they were bombing the Taliban, and I was fascinated by the contrails of the jets that were 30 kilometers away, 20 kilometers away, basically bombing humanity, the Taliban and the earth, and the swirling, romantic, beautiful turbans of the men, and how elated they were. These were the members of the Northern Alliance who'd been fighting the Taliban and the Soviets for decades. I always was intrigued by the strangeness of war. Right at the moment of prayers, there was a massive fight, massive battle right here. You can see the tank marks in the ground. And the Taliban are about 50 meters to the left. And then I'm with the Northern Alliance, and everybody says, okay, stop, it's time to pray. And they put down their rifles, their artillery, their AK-47s, and pray, and then get back up again and start killing themselves. And I was just flabbergasted by our species on what draws us to do this. The landscape of war. You can do a whole book on the landscape of war. The landscape of war. This is Kabul after decades of war. Bad place to park. This is what happens when our species, when humans just are not conscious, whether it's the perpetrator or the initiator or the perpetuator. all of it is a lack of consciousness. After 10 years with Time Magazine, began to work for National Geographic, and so began a now, I guess, 21 plus career with National Geographic. I think I've done now 25 stories for the magazine. I'm working on 25th or the 26th. I can't remember. These are a few of the covers. And my first story I ever did was titled, well, it was actually titled Hope in Hell When the World Forgets. And I think that's such an appropriate title because I was in this past life of my mind. I really was, although I don't believe this place called hell exists or heaven exists. The only thing is right now, and we sure are making a mess of this place. And again, that connects to our lack of consciousness. The only species, the only living entity on our planet that wreaks such havoc on this only home we can live are humans. No other species does that. And yes, elephants may trample, a field of plants, but the earth regenerates itself. Humans will drop nuclear bombs and decimate the soil, but in Earth time, in about 50,000 years from now, that toxicity will still kind of be there. But everything heals itself. But the reality is that the only living entity on our planet, humans, are the only ones that are so unconscious most of the time to perpetuate the insanity of our inhumanity. And so the story, Hope in Hell When the World Forgets, now when I think about it, I'm just talking about it off my thoughts here, really was the appropriate first assignment to do for National Geographic. It began with the Indian Ocean tsunami. It was a story about aid workers around the world. And when the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami devastated so much of our planet, and yet these tsunamis have happened, for millennia. There's probably been 1 million tsunamis on our planet, maybe more. We just never had cameras to photograph them, and we weren't so densely populated as we are today. So this story for National Geographic began in Indonesia, because I was there. This is an area called Lumno, where a wall of water 30 meters high, moving across the ocean at the speed of a jet, slammed into the northern Sumatra. There was about 7,000 people living in this village, and the only thing that withstood was the mosque. I went back a week or so later after that aerial flyover, and these are the 30-some, 42, 43 survivors of over 7,000 people praying in that destroyed mosque. I always try to look for metaphors and sort of, twists on it. The aid workers were the scale of the very large 4-door pickup truck is as if it's popping out of his eye because it's being, carried by helicopters. This is how we move things today. It's just astonishing. This is about 3-4 kilometers inland. The water came in, not only inundating a cemetery, but bodies everywhere. It's a simple image of humans. Any one of us, could be any one of us, being tossed into a mass grave, and it really. This was a typifying point. I'm going to talk again, being vulnerable, sharing again what I shared earlier. We are all here temporary. We are all going to die, and we came from the earth, and we will return to the earth. And this image always is in my mind of we can, build and get the most titanium steeled box that we like to call a coffin. You can build the pyramids and stick yourself in the middle of it. But in Earth time, a metal coffin or the pyramids of Giza, in Earth time, let's say, 1 million years from now, Earth is 4 or 5 billion years old, will just return to the earth and become topsoil. So if any one of you are around me when I have to give this body back, please do not put me in any fancy, it has to be the cheapest thing possible, and even better if it's just a sack like this, because I want to return back to the earth. And when we understand our fragile as existence in this life that we all have, as those of you who are here with us or still here with us, this image, as simple, and really I just mostly have it in here for the metronome of it, that what are we going to give to ourselves and to each other in this life? Went to Afghanistan, also for the Hope and Health story, for decades of war and conflict. This is the prosthetic center in Kabul, where a woman with her children waits to get fitted with a new artificial leg because a landmine placed again in the earth by humans blew her leg off. This is the prosthetic lab itself, and it's a simple image. We ran this in the magazine. I remember going, I don't want this to run. It's so easy. But sometimes you win some edits and sometimes you don't. Also went to Uganda for the forgotten conflict. There had been a war, internal conflict for more than a decade. These are children, about 10 to 20,000 of them every night at the time. Thankfully, it ended. Were called night commuters and would walk from their refugee camps or internally displaced camps to safety centers and live together. An entire generation of human beings, boys and girls, grew up not living with their parents, all because of the human weakness of conflict. And again, the story was on aid workers. And this is I still keep in touch with this doctor. Suddenly, her name slips my memory. She's from Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and she's still 20 some years later could be making so much more money in the medical profession in Amsterdam or elsewhere, but she gives her life to helping those who can't help themselves. And meeting these people, connecting back to the Peace Corps workers and the aid workers, again, keeps vibrating in my consciousness. And I'm going to continue with that here. I'm going to move through this a little bit faster. The next story I did for the magazine was on malaria. National Geographic tends to send me on very layered projects that are super academic or filled with graphs and statistics. And my role, and I seem to know for some strange reason how to do it, is to demystify and visualize and humanize statistics. This is in Calcutta, where everyone in this family has had malaria in an urban jungle. We call it concrete malaria, urban malaria. It is a most densely populated city on Earth. How do we give to this, and how do we visualize, teeming, vibrant populations, and then concrete and the spread of malaria? This is just a magical scene in Calcutta. How laundry workers who do laundry by hand spread malaria by creating pools of water that propagate more mosquitoes. Tanzania for prevention. Tanzania is the largest maker of mosquito netting. It's Africa helping Africa instead of foreigners coming in to do it. Mosquito nets are used on people's homes as doors, door mosquito blinds, not just on beds. Went to Kenya. There was a massive outbreak of malaria, and this gentleman is about to go cerebral. And then Zambia, which has the highest cases of malaria on Earth. Traditional healing, traditional methods to cure those with malaria. This is at the Kaleni Mission Hospital near the border of Congo and Zambia, where a family and a mother had carried her son for 3 days to reach this only hospital that provides malaria treatment, mother and child. When I look at this now, I can see that the influences of my past life in this other realm of photography interweave at that moment and still so much today. Story on piracy of the Malacca Straits, These are estuaries where pirates hide to attack ships that move through the Malacca Straits between Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. This is a bar where, and we have to use the ethical word, allegedly pirates hang out. What causes piracy and desperation to take on a massive ship and commandeer its cargo? It's poverty. It's coming tragically from a country I love so dearly and lived in, Indonesia. It's extreme poverty, extreme hard life. And when you're sitting there on a boat and you see these massive ships gleaming with light, carrying billions of dollars worth of goods, you're going to be desperate because of the division of rich and poor. Just strange bars where the pirates hang out. This is a brothel on the island called Bobby Island, or Pig Island, aptly called for such a horrible place where women are trafficked in order to for the pirates to come after they've done their duty. Again, realities of poverty and inequality. A family whose daughter died of a common disease, but again, due to lack of economics and medical care, died. They're giving her final ablutions. In Malaysia, the waters of the Malacca Straits are considered spiritual in the Islamic community, and they're doing a ritualistic bathing to heal their daughter. Then I proposed a story on the spirituality of volcanoes in Indonesia. I was living in Indonesia at the time. And this was a fascinating story on what Indonesians consider volcanoes to be the navels or the belly buttons of the earth. Within this volcano, it's a triple caldera. In the background is Mount Semeru, foreground is Mount Bromo, and we're on this massive volcano on top of it. And there's a spiritual ceremony happening in that forward volcano where the smoke's coming out, the sulfur's coming out. Where every year it's called a casada ceremony. They make offerings into the volcanoes, and due to poverty, hundreds of people live in the volcano for the entire week, and it's unbearably sulfur filled, and numerous times this volcano erupts and kills people. But for an entire week, about 100, 200 people live in the volcano to collect coins, money, and food that are thrown in as offerings to the spirit that's believed to reside in the volcano. And again, this vibration of poverty, rich and poor, this constant metronome of division, and how do we find balance in this life is constantly vibrating for me. And again, it's in this conscious state that because of this other existence of mind that I used to be in, is so prevalent on how do we create change. This is a ceremony in Sumatra where a woman becomes possessed by the spirit of the volcano, that she goes into trance for 3 days. It's just her feet. I have lots of pictures of what she looks like, but it was a sort of devotion that everyone has to this woman who speaks for the spirit of the volcano. And by the way, these are all Protestant Christians. This is Mount Merapi in central Java erupting. This is on the island of Bali during Malasti, or a cleansing ceremony, where the Balinese believe that spirits reside in the water, in the ocean, and they reside in the mountains, which are volcanoes. And to bring balance into their life, they go into a deep state of trance and begin to stab each other with razor-sharp daggers, but never pierce their skin. I've photographed Malastis maybe 7, 8 times, and I've never seen anybody bleed. The spirituality of water coming off Mount Rinjani on the island of Lombok, where someone is making offerings to the spirit of the volcano. Next year I did was on how we feed ourselves. It was called the End of Plenty, when food prices were rising around the planet in about 2008. Started in China, and sort of this wall of bowls reminded me of the iron rice bowl of China. This happens to be one of the Panasonic television factories, where every day this company, Panasonic, or the factory itself, has to feed over 500 people 3 meals a day. And so I look for little symbols that play out. As commodity prices were rising across the planet, in Giza, right at the Great Pyramids of Giza, the government's subsidized bread program prices were rising, and every day, 3 times a day, Egyptians were fighting to get this government subsidized bread before the cost of food would rise, right at the Great Pyramids of Giza. It's just astonishing where the theater of our humanity plays out. In Iowa, the breadbasket of the world, the harvesting of soybeans that no longer go into our stomachs. So what we're having on our planet, and we're 8.3 billion people, that much of the grains and foods that we grow, or in this case grains and soybean and corn, go to not our bellies anymore, but goes into the bellies of automobiles as ethanol. When natural disasters happen, but they're kind of natural, but they're kind of not, climate change and the massive shifting of weather patterns on our planet. The Mississippi River flooded due to unrelenting amounts of rain, and the entire commodity prices went up around the world because of this. So weather pattern affects how we feed ourselves. The Amazon, the burning of the lungs of our earth. This was at a time when fires were illegal, and yet everywhere we couldn't even fly the airplane for 2 days. We had to stay on a small dirt runway because there was so much smoke from illegal burns burning down the lungs of our earth, trees, to make room for more soybeans. And in this case, this is a Greek soy freighter bringing eight metric tons to China, because China is having an economic explosion, as it should. I lived in China, moved to China in 1996, and it was at a moment still where China was still reeling with enormous amounts of poverty, and people moving from the countryside to factories to make all the things that we don't want to make in Europe and elsewhere anymore. And I went to this market in Guangzhou in 1996. And it was nothing but vegetables, a bit of chicken, maybe some little bit of pork. But as the economy of China has exploded, and that has empowered people, and that's a really important thing and a good thing. I'm sick and tired of photographing poverty. But when the economic engine switches so rapidly, suddenly 1.2 billion people have the ability to buy meat. And China doesn't grow enough soybeans to feed the grain for the pigs. So that's why it comes from Brazil, burning of the Amazon, shipped by freighter to China. In central China, because of the rise in commodity prices, wheat prices were going up, and wheat prices tripled. And this wheat noodle maker was telling me how he was already losing customers because nobody could afford the rising cost of wheat. Went to the Punjab in India, the breadbasket of India, where the Green Revolution in the 1960s toxified the water table system due to excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides, creating enormous amounts of birth defects. Farmer suicides in Punjab are the highest farmer suicide rates on earth, because the price controls and farmers unable to afford paying their the loans on their tractors. There's a mother with 3 children. Her husband's portrait is on the wall. He had killed himself. In the Philippines, every day, even to this day, at the International Rice Research Institute, also known as IRI, every day, numerous workers sort the most healthy grains of rice, and they store every bit of rice in this frozen, in like a frozen center at IRI. And why this is so important, and thankfully this simple image kind of looked like the map of Europe or a flying pterodactyl, when Pol Pot of Cambodia decimated the entire agricultural industry of Cambodia during the period often called as the killing fields, or the enormous death of millions of people in Cambodia. The entire, all the rice fields were devastated and lost. And they would try to grow rice by seeds that people would bring them, and it wouldn't grow as well. And at the center, where women every day separate for the most healthiest grains of rice, they had a small packet of rice that was indigenous to Cambodia. And to this day, the Cambodians are now eating and growing the indigenous rice of their soil. And it's all because of these people's hands. So you try to look for metaphors. I remember going into this center going, what the hell am I going to do here? They're just working on a table and sorting grains of rice. They're like, oh my God, I spent like 2 days to get there and a long flight. But you get into a vibration of like, how do you see this? How do you give to it? We are today 8.3 billion people. Let's do a round number, 8 billion. Of the 8 billion of us, there are about 2.5 to 3 billion people, maybe slightly more, who live and exist on $5 a day. And I wanted to understand, who are these fellow human beings who are earning $5 a day, or touching €6? And I was in Bangladesh, where a farmer was harvesting his rice crops, and out of nowhere, three women came, but in this case, this woman with a basket, begging the farmer if she could pick up every grain of fallen rice that was not collected by the harvesting machine. And for hours, she and other women with a broom and their fingers picked up every grain of rice, because it was the only meal that they could feed their families. This is what happens for such a greater percentage of our planet, our population, and especially when the rising cost of food occurs. And then there's of the 8 billion of us, there are about 1 billion fellow human beings, no different than you and I, who just happen to have been born in a different place that is cordoned off by an invisible line called a border. And they are enormously marginalized in many cases due to totalitarian governments, again, lack of consciousness from their leaders, corruption, but also in a growing reality across our planet, the effects of climate change. This is in Ethiopia, where a drought had affected Eritrea and Ethiopia and Djibouti. And I met Momina Baka. She's from Eritrea. She fled Eritrea because their food supply had dwindled because of climate change, and also because of conflict. And the day I met her, her sorghum had arrived from an aid agency, Oxfam, but her child, she wasn't producing enough milk, wasn't producing any milk to feed her child, and her child was dying of starvation. Graves were everywhere. The countless people who were dying. No aid. Oxfam had only just arrived, and I had gone with them for this aid relief. Momina, I met. She had nothing. She was a single mother. She was starving herself, and we spent about an hour together in her home, or a nomadic hut. And she said, I want to make something for you. I said, Momina, please, you don't have to. She said, no, I want to make you tea. And she gave me the only thing that she had to eat. She shared her biscuits with me. The next story I did was on our spiritual need of water. Cenotes in Mexico. I'm just going to move through this quickly. I hope this is interesting. I hope people are still here. You may think this is for Epiphany Day. You may think we're in Russia, but in a typical National Geographic way, we look at things we turn things upside down, inside out. This is in Maine, in the northeast New England of the United States, where they carved a cross into the frozen ice, where they were going to do their Epiphany Day celebrations the next day. This is during the Gangadusara ceremony in Hardwar, India, where 1 million people are on the banks of the sacred Ganga River making offerings that are floating down the sacred Ganga. Mikvahs, the Jewish form of ablutions. This is in Ukraine, before the war in Ukraine. Islam, ablutions before prayer in Istanbul, Turkey. Also in Istanbul, but at the Greek Patriarchate in Istanbul, sacred water and baptism. I was really lucky that the young boy's private parts were covered by the cross so that we could actually publish this image. Looking at the other side of water, different aspects of water, ancient Roman ruins in Turkey, where people go and enjoy the hot springs lying on top of 1,000-year-old crumbled Roman pillars. In south of France, where it's believed that a young girl had a visitation of the Virgin Mary, where every day thousands of people pray and touch the sacred water that comes from the cave. In Kyoto, Japan, prayers under a sacred waterfall in Shintoism. And in Haiti, in the beautiful spirituality of voodoo, which has a bad misunderstanding. It's just a very deep, committed form of Christianity. Thousands of people in the sacred waterfalls during the ritual of sadhu, prayer under the waterfalls. And I don't know if many of you follow the Out of Eden walk. For the last 11 years, I've been walking with my colleague and writer Paul Salopek on a story for National Geographic, the longest running series ever for National Geographic. We've now published 10 or 11 stories. It's called the Out of Eden Walk. We're following the footsteps of our ancestors, of how we walked out of Africa some 50 to 70,000 years ago. Wherever you are kindly watching this, me going blah, blah, blah with you here. You may be in Italy, you may be in Angola, you may be in Georgia, you may be in Hawaii, but how did your great ancestors get there? Reality is we all come from a region today we call the Horn of Africa, and our ancestors by about 2,500 generations ago walked to wherever you are sitting in front of your computer or on your iPhone at this moment. So Paul and I are wandering the footsteps of our ancestors. Paul is going by foot. He never takes a car. He is in Japan now. I'm going to be going to Japan in about 3 weeks to do more photography on the Out of Eden walk, because he is about to leave Asia for North America. He's been walking for 11 years. Some 8,000 miles. I can't remember what it is in kilometers, apologies. And Paul uses camels, donkeys, mules, backpacks, oxen, never a car, because he wants to travel how our ancestors did some 50 to 70,000 years ago. This is not a Guinness Book of World Records stunt. People have walked around the planet. I remember reading that somebody's walked backwards across the United States. Okay, whatever turns you on. But this is about slow journalism. And of course, I can't photograph what happened 50,000 years ago. The narrative is who we are as a collective humanity today. This is under the brilliant, cloudless, star-filled night, planetary universe light of the Afar region of Ethiopia. A young woman she didn't have a mirror. She'd never seen herself in a mirror. And I was sitting in the car and she was looking at herself in a mirror. And her father came running thinking that she was bothering me and was going to beat her with a stick. And I said, no, Ramula, no, please. She can use the mirror all she wants. Met up with Paul again later. I was sitting having tea about 200 meters away, and I saw these people lined up about to pray. And I'm like, wait a second, I know the Islamic prayer times. It was, I don't know, like 10 o'clock. Like, why are people praying? So I ran over there and caught the last few minutes, like literally the last few seconds of the prayer. And I asked the imam, why are you all here praying? And he said, we haven't had rain in 3 years. Our goats and cattle are dying, and the river, which happens to be right before them, and ironically, the direction they're praying is in towards Mecca, has been dried up and no rainfall. Again, the reality of climate change. So if you do work on stories on the climate, which are critical, many of us are doing it, have done it. I'm working on a new story now for the magazine related to climate issues. try to approach it in a way that is turned upside down, inside out, so that it raises more consciousness, so that when you see this image like this, and I'm not trying to say that I solved the consciousness photography realm of anything, but that you look at climate change in a different way. I'm just going to move through this here because I'm realizing when did we start? I don't even remember. So I hope I'm not too long. I can't see messages here, Nika. So if you're writing me, I can't see a damn thing.
Yeah, there's no more there's no messages yet, because I did encourage people to then ask them at the end. But
Okay.
we still have time. You're 1 hour in session, so feel free to do another 15 to 30 minutes as you
Okay.
wish.
Is everybody still hanging in there? Is this interesting?
Yes,
I can't see
they
anybody.
are.
Okay. So the footprint of our ancestors used to just be, footprints, maybe sandal prints. Today, the footprints across our planet are plastic. These trees, I could do a whole exhibition on the plastic waste that had blown up on trees everywhere in this part of Djibouti. These are people from Eritrea and Somalia and Ethiopia in a smuggler's house, literally locked inside, waiting to be taking a ship to go further out of the Horn of Africa into the Middle East, onward into Europe. These are people that are affected by climate change. Many of these were farmers who couldn't grow food anymore, dealing with acute poverty and war and conflict. So I know of those of you in Europe dealing with a massive influx of migration. We have it all around our planet, and always have. This is the interesting thing. So keep this in a meditation. When we left, when our ancestors left Africa, again, some 70,000 years ago, we weren't looking to go how to get to, Disneyland Paris or Disneyland Shanghai, or how to find a Carrefour or a Walmart or anything like that. We were looking for hope and opportunity, better food staples, land that had degraded, a myriad of things. And that is no different than what's happening today. It's just 50,000 years ago, we didn't have these invisible lines called borders. We had probably a number of languages already, but we didn't have this sense of nationalism that creates so much conflict of an us versus them. And today, this is a lava field, ancient lava field in Djibouti. It's called Ardakoba. And to this day, over 100,000 fellow human beings walk through this lava field to reach the beaches, to again take small boats that often sink in the Mediterranean for a better life in sheer epic desperation, of which none of us will ever even remotely understand that level of desperation. So desperate that you lose your personal belongings, your shoes. You die along the way because you get lost in the fog or in the maze of the labyrinth of stones. It's about a 30, 40 mile, 30, 40 kilometer foot journey to get through this ancient lava field. As so many people die along the way. And on the beaches of Djibouti City, I was walking with my friend Stanislas, and he was like, well, do you want to go home or back to the hotel? I had just arrived a day earlier, maybe that day. And I said, no, Stanislas, let's go get lost and let's just walk back to the hotel. And a little bit of giving and love that I'd like to give for you. When you don't know what to do on a story, and it happens to me all the time, I have no idea most of the time. I'm off to California in a week to work on a continuing project on soil, and I have no idea what I'm going to do, and that's perfectly fine. There's an enormous power in the I do not know what I'm going to do. And in this case, Stanislas and I just started to walk along the beach of Djibouti City, along the Dead Sea, not the Dead Sea, along the Red Sea, and we were talking about life and what you do and blah blah blah. And like an hour walking, and it's quite dark at that point. I see these people with their phones in the air, And I'm like, Stanislaus, what the hell are these people doing here? There's like 20 of them all shaking their phones in the air. And he had seen this all the time, right? He's from there. He no longer sees the magic. And we all have this wherever we live. We no longer see the magic where we are. And you don't have to go to the ends of the earth to find magic. You just have to realize how magical everything is around you at all times. But in this case, I'm like, oh my God. And he said, oh, these are people from Somalia and Eritrea and Ethiopia, and they get a SIM card from an illegal SIM from the black market in Djibouti City. And if they stand at this one spot on the beach and shake their phones in an act they call catching a signal, they can speak to their loved ones who've immigrated and gone further into Europe. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the story I'm working on. This is the human migration of the past 50,000 years ago and today with technology to speak to our loved ones. I talked to people here on this beach who were speaking to their mother and father who already made it to Sweden, and they were asking if their embarkation papers had come in. You get lost and you come across some of the most magical things that are all around us at all times. And if we're only conscious of it, and so be aware and be giving to everything. The next part of the walk was in Saudi Arabia. Paul and I were the first non-Saudis, non-Muslims to be given really the keys of the kingdom by the royal family to walk through Saudi Arabia without any guides or minders. And it's because the son of the ruling family understood the importance of the Out of Eden walk story. These are ancient Nabatean ruins carved over 3,000 years ago in Saudi Arabia. They also are connected and equal to the same Nabatean ruins carved in Jordan in the ancient city of Petra. These were ancient tombs. In Saudi Arabia, the cost for benzene is ridiculously inexpensive. Only a few pennies per liter. But the most expensive commodity in Saudi Arabia is what they don't have, and that's water. And the strangeness is they use fuel pumps, benzene pumps, to fill water jugs with the most expensive commodity that they don't have. There's all these little metronomes everywhere. It's a simple picture, but I just like the old ancient city of Jeddah as it's sort of leaning to the side and the gentleman's glowing phone on his head. Bedouins, because of the wealth of Saudi Arabia, hundreds of people, mostly men, go and want to play Bedouin on the weekend. So they go out in the desert with their $100,000 Land Cruisers and whatnot. They bring generators, sofas, and servants and carpets, and they play Bedouin on the weekend. I did spend a few days with a real Bedouin who's lived his whole life with his family out in the desert. It doesn't really mean anything, but I just like the moment of the birds. Then we went into Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. This is on Epiphany Day at the spot on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, where it's believed that Jesus was baptized. And at this day, hundreds, if not thousands, of people climb up this little mountain to touch and pray at the crucifix right at the Jordan River. So this is called Wadi Hafir. It's an ancient wadi with petroglyphs everywhere, carved about 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. It's a simple image again, but it is the Corriere della Sera, the New York Times, the Independent, the Time Magazine, the National Geographic of 5,000, 8,000 years ago, petroglyphs. And they're everywhere. This is what our ancestors drew and wrote, what they saw, and it's still there for us today in this wadi, in this valley where thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors walked. Met up with Paul in Petra. This time he's with a donkey. Also looking at social issues. So Out of Eden is all about social issues of who we are today. This is right at the beginning of the Syrian conflict. Already at this time in Jordan, there were over 100,000 Syrians displaced due to war and internal madness of an egoistic, non-conscious leader called Assad. And everywhere in the agricultural industry, in this case, the tomato industry, were Syrians, many of them children. They had displaced the Egyptians who used to do this brutal, difficult labor because out of desperation, they were even cheaper to employ. These are in the UNESCO heritage site of Petra. There are families still living in these ancient caves. You can see the glowing light, which is actually a fire in this cave where a family was living. This is when Paul and I were walking from Jericho to Bethlehem. There was this broken water main pipe, and out of nowhere, a bus comes up with a family so that they could film their daughter's bat mitzvah video while they're playing in this busted water main. And as we all know, in the Middle East, and definitely in this part of the world, one of the greatest causes of the conflict is water. The settlements that are protests by the Palestinians as tear gas from the Israelis were lobbed in as the settlements were expanding. This is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre on Holy Saturday, where it's called the Holy Fire, where it's believed that the fire spreads to everybody from the tomb of Christ. I was there, and the fire comes out by a priest's hand, and then the fire is shared. But it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. This is James Joseph, a Canadian for the last 30 years, has been living a life of Christ. I met him, spent a few days with him. Here he's going to go to sleep at the 9th station of the cross in the old city of Bethlehem. This is the entire length of the male section of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem during prayers. It was the first, and I don't care what damn camera you use, but I'll play the game. This was the first iPhone cover of National Geographic on about 3 foreign language editions. This was made with an iPhone 5. So don't give a damn about what kind of tool you use. You give love to that tool, through you, to communicate to the universe and to all humanity. Syria and Turkey, Paul and I had been wandering through, I'll stop here before we go, walking through Turkey, doing more an overall view of Turkey today and the Syrian crisis that was already occurring. Unfortunately, at that point already, around 300,000 Syrians were living in Turkey, and to this day, they are still there. Astonishing how we are still separating humanity from each other because of ethnicity, culture, and language and borders. And when we happened to be there, ISIS was attacking the city of Kobani near the border of Turkey. And I heard about it and drove there, left Paul while we were walking. I said, Paul, I got to go. I got to see this. And I got there in the early evening, and there were about 5,000 people at the border begging to get through because ISIS was maybe 20 kilometers away. And it was finally at night that the Turkish military cut the barbed wire, the invisible line that is there, but lined off by metal and barbed wire, and an influx came of over 250,000 human beings over the course of 72 hours. It was the largest mass migration in this part of the world than the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the Armenian exodus in the other direction, leaving Turkey into Syria, Iran, and Lebanon. It was just a devastating time. A dust devil came through while everybody was trying to frantically get across the border. Countless people had no place to live, in this case, an entire family making home at a petrol station near the border with Syria and Turkey. This is Dean Mohammed. I met him. He had been already 3 years living in this refugee tent, and he was from the city of Idlib And he told me, I remembered my garden in Iblid, and when I was working as a laborer here, as a refugee and a laborer outside the camp, he collected grass seeds, and he wanted to plant grass seeds that reminded him of his garden back in Idlib. And when I met Mohammed, he was cutting the grass with a pair of scissors. Daily life in the refugee camp. If you weren't lucky to get in the refugee camp, there are tens of thousands, and still to this day, it was the women, the young girls, who would have to fight for bread coupons to be able to get food for their families. Many just lived in abandoned farmhouses. And those who had just arrived, this family, I met them already seeking work out of desperation and poverty, and all their children were picking cotton as well, child labor to pick cotton in Turkey. Did a story on the Armenian genocide 100 years later. This is in Turkey, in a crevasse believed where hundreds of ethnic Armenians were pushed to their death during the genocide into this hole 100 years earlier. Armenian churches that were ransacked in near Diyarbakir in the Anatolia region of Turkey. I met many Armenians in Armenia, and they would always say, yes, it was terrible, and I miss my homeland, but what I really miss are our goats and sheep. And in Turkey, the new oppressed minority are Kurds, and these are Kurds tending what is very much correct, the ancestors of former of sheep that were formerly cared for by Armenians. This is at the border with Armenia and Turkey. A mosque is on the right, Armenian church is on the left. There's a river, and the Turkish military often uses the Armenian church for target practice. The last Armenian family living in Turkey, in the village of Sassoon, high in the mountains of Sassoon. And it's a fascinating story. The gentleman smoking cigarettes behind you there on the red chair, he's Turkish, and his great-grandfather swore an oath to protect the ethnic Armenian family that was still living in Sassoon at the time of the genocide. And to this day, this gentleman smoking the cigarette is the protector of about 20-some ethnic Armenians who are the last living Armenians in this part of Anatolia in Turkey. An Azeri wedding. This is high on Mount Ararat, not all the way on the top, but these are old Armenian farms, the stone lines that would give the divisions of each farmer, each farmland, and in the background is Armenia and downtown Yerevan. In Armenia, marching on the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, tens of thousands of people carrying torches to the Armenian genocide memorial. Outside of Gyumri, where it's believed that hundreds of ethnic Armenians were pushed to their death down this mountainside. The village of Zovasar in late winter, where it was founded, originally populated 100 years earlier by ethnic Armenians who came from Turkey. A gentleman whose mother walked from, with her parents, or his grandparents and his mother, walked from Turkey 100 years earlier in a memorial area of their home, in an outhouse, an out shed, with the only artifacts that he still has of his mother. We also visited the survivors of the genocide. Those who were still living, all were about 104, 106 years old. You can visit my website to see the film made about this. I was told we can't show video here because of the connection. I make a lot of movies, and it's on my website. A giant cross in Armenia, overlooking and shining into Turkey, under peach tree, under apricot trees. and the ancient bridge that used to connect Armenia to Turkey. I'm on the Turkish side, that's Armenia. And sitting at this bridge, I was in tears by how ruinous we are as a species, as people, how we find things that divide us instead of unite us. And so I started with an NGO, Bridging Stories. It still exists on Instagram, where for the last 4 years, we worked with 10 Armenian photographers and 10 Turkish photographers, all between the age of 18 and 21, so they could tell their own stories to find unity and commonality. It really is an act to one day rebuild this bridge. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan at the RLC, not the RLC, at the Caspian Sea. Unemployed oil workers when the fuel prices dropped. At a Uzbeki, at a Kazakh wedding, and Marilyn Monroe makes an appearance right at the moment of prayers. Family in the oil area of Aktau. Women who carry the greatest burden of labor in so many parts of the world, also in Kazakhstan. Well, men stand around and have cigarettes and talk. In Uzbekistan, in Tashkent, 2 brothers, both getting married at the same time to save money for the wedding costs. Crossing the Amu Darya River because of so much snow and ice that the bridge doesn't work, so they use boats to ferry hundreds of people every day across the river. A family in Uzbekistan during dinner time, and a baby just randomly flying in the air. Just get to know people and spend time with them, and the most magically strange things will just happen. Some of the rich history and culture of Uzbekistan. After a circumcision ceremony, the boy is bewildered and everybody's handing him money. Just a really layered, strange moment at a market. Everywhere is some magicalness going on. And if you're going to do a story about the Silk Road, well, you probably got to visit silk making. This is a silk factory in eastern Uzbekistan. Met up with Paul in the Kizilkum Desert, where for 5 days we walked together under an enormous beauty of our universe, of the Milky Way, just a piece of the Milky Way. We are one speck within 300 million other specks within one galaxy of 3 billion known galaxies, each with 300 million or more specks of specks. And when you think you have a problem, you don't. And India was the last story that we just published last year was China. I don't have it here, so we'll wrap it up here. This is India following the rivers of the narrative was following the rivers of North India from the Pakistan-India border to the India-Burma border. Toxic rivers, toxic soil, because in Punjab, again, birth defects, a gentleman collapses due to an epilepsy seizure. Boatmen who, due to the toxicity of the river, they used to be fishermen, cannot be fishermen anymore, so now they ferry people on a boat. Precarious nature of water due to climate change and drought. This well is drying up. When I was there just a few years ago, they surveys had shown they only had about 7 years of water remaining. The sacredness of water rivers, in this case, the Ganges River, during a cremation. Illegal sand mining that's used for construction, for the massive explosion of development in India. Just a dhaba. I just love these strange theater places. Everywhere is theater. And I mean that in a serious sense. It's not the theater of my imagination, like in my former existence in photography was what was I going to imagine and create. This is where in art school nobody inspired me to the enormity of reality. And here and it's all over. You don't have to be in India to do this. I find this here in the Berkshires. I have a friend of mine visiting me, and we were out in the garden the other day, and she's meeting the neighbors, and she said after they left, oh, I meet these people that are your neighbors, and I feel like I'm in a movie when I hear them talk. And that's because she sees and hears everything in this freshness. And I do that. I try to do that here where I live. And in reality, yes, everything is theater. Just listen to the voice, the way they talk. And in this case, in India, I walk into this dhaba, and it's just like magical theater. It's like this everywhere if you're just in frequency of it, in consciousness of it. When you sip a cup of tea, thank in unbelievable respect the women who pluck tea with their hands, the enormously difficult, underpaid labor, because that's why your tea is about a quarter of a US dollar, and it has been for the last 20 or so years. It's because of abused labor, and most of them, that labor being done by women. This is the Brahmaputra, just a sort of a layered, fun moment. Just when you do a portrait of somebody, you don't have to see them. I was lost into this. This is an island that is affected by the rise and fall of the Brahmaputra River, and so it's a fisher. He does fish farming, and he has to pump all the water out to get his fish out, because in a few weeks there's going to be 2 meters of water over this land. Harsh labor of brick making, all done by women. Try to do this. Every time I photograph labor, anything to do with labor, I start by not picking up my camera, and I ask to do the labor that they're doing. In this case, the women thought I was crazy. I said, no, I really want to understand. So for about 20, 30 minutes, I carried bricks with these women, because I needed to understand what it's like to be them. Otherwise, how am I photographing it? How am I giving to it? How am I in any expression of anything other than self-indulgence, me, myself, I personally, which I don't give a damn about? How do you become a conduit of the enormities and complexities and the beauties and the harshness and the torment and the love that is all around us? You have to become in union with it. So every time you do something with labor, whether it's people carrying sacks of rice, I carry the sacks of rice. If it's somebody breaking something with rocks with a hammer, I'm going to use that hammer and break the rocks. If they're doing laundry by hand in a river, I'm going to do it by hand in the river, and then I'm going to photograph. Because otherwise, I'm a voyeur. I'm just there, oh, wow, I'm making great pictures. No, I'm making fuck all sick, demented, twisted images of our humanity. And I need to play a role to raise consciousness so that we don't have to see this madness all the time. Empowering women in India to really become the force of modern day India in a patriarchal society like India. These girls are fire. Oh, us versus them. This was in Charlottesville a few years ago, during the Trump administration, where the far right had totally out there trying to protect this Confederate Civil War statue of Robert E. Lee. It was crazy. And then everybody's beating each other up. Guys, people coming here in a night of shining armor. Like, you go to a protest like this? Okay, whatever turns you on. This is the human cattle of desperation. These are Palestinians wandering through the corridor to do the work in Israel that the Israelis don't want to do, or can't do, or really don't want to do, because of cheap labor. The Palestinians are desperate for work, and we all know the situation now in elsewhere in the Middle East that is somewhat connected to this. The separation barrier in Bethlehem, at the time Trump was president, and he says, "I'm going to build you a brother," was spray painted on the wall. And then I went to Mexico to photograph the separation barrier that's being built, and now was almost fully completed. Thankfully, not all of it. These are prototypes of the separation barrier that Trump was having commissioned that would be used to divide North America with Mexico, or United States with Mexico. The conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, which tragically ended, well, thankfully ended, but with a tragic loss of land for Armenians and tens of thousands of people killed over decades of conflict. These are the remains of Turkish communities in Nagorno-Karabakh, old Islamic graves in Karabakh. In Brazil, us versus them, indigenous people who were moved off their land, ancestral lands behind them. And amazingly, I was there at the timing when the farmer, who the government forced these people off their land so that they could give this land to the farmer, the farmer's harvesting their land. And this family is protesting for the last 2 years, living across the street on the side of the road, fighting the government to get their land back because their ancestors are even buried in the trees behind there. A friend of mine, when I give this presentation, I can't remember where, at a National Geographic event, I think, or somewhere, messaged me saying, it's about less than a year ago, that this this couple had been murdered. In Rwanda, to overcome the ancient scars of the genocide, a program to bring Hutus and Tutsis that were killing each other during the Rwandan genocide to walk together, where one, doesn't matter if you're a Hutu or a Tutsi, one closes their eyes and the other guides them to build trust. It's a program that's actually really working. The Rohingya crisis out of Myanmar, Burma, the Rohingya ethnic minority fleeing by raft to Bangladesh, mother carrying her child, everyone else, massive, over nearly 1 million people fled into Bangladesh and are still in refugee camps today. Children fighting for food at the refugee camps. And just in closing here, the madness that continues in Ukraine as soon as the war began. I couldn't just sit here in the Berkshires. So what was that, almost 3 years ago? 3 years ago, my gosh. Immediately jumped on a plane the moment that Russia invaded Ukraine and spent 3 weeks funding myself. These are Ukrainian soldiers heading out to the front line, saying goodbye to their partners. I was going to show you a bit, but let's go into questions. The latest story I'm working on for National Geographic is soil extinction, the death of topsoil. We are, as I mentioned, 8.3 billion people. The UN and other ag farmers and scientists done endless research. We have about 40 to 45 harvests of food left on our planet, or about 40 to 45 years left, and then humans will not be able to feed themselves. This has to do with the degradation of topsoil due to climate change and desertification, excessive tilling, fertilizers and pesticides. Let's do the math. It's pretty simple. Again, we are 8.3 billion people on the only place we can live. Yes, you can maybe say in your head, well, we're moving to Mars, we're moving to the moon. Only a few, very small portion of people are going to go there, and in all love and kindness. I love the greenness and the nature and the beauty of this planet. I'm open to going other planets, but reality is it's going to be only very few people. In the next 40 years, if our species, if our insanity of our inhumanity does not kill itself and decimate itself out of being completely unconscious, which is what causes war and conflict, we will be, if we survive, about 15 billion human beings, nearly double the population. How will we feed ourselves? So that's the following story that I'm working on now. I'm off to been in India twice now for the story. We'll go to the Sahel in Africa. We go to California next week for the spring harvest, or spring planting, and also be going throughout the Sahel in Africa for the Great Green Wall, China, the Caucasus, South America. Anyways, I hope this was interesting. I'm going to stop sharing. I can't see anybody, but I see you now, Nika. I hope
Thank you,
there's
John.
one or two people still here. Um, but
We still have our 20 people here, so yeah,
oh
thank you
my,
for.
well, thank you for suffering.
uh, but yeah, first of all, thank you from my side. I think I'm speaking in the name of everyone for this inspiring session. I think it's how I see your work also. It's a bit of practice in mindfulness, like how you really attune with certain like projects you do and how you're really there present. So I think yeah, this is how you can really build consciousness also by being present. If I'm feeling this correctly a little bit, but I think it's the stories you select also resonate with you and how you are at that moment, I assume.
The only thing, Nika, that is happening at this moment is you got headphones on, a orangey, not orange, a mustard yellow shirt. Your hair is strapped over. I got a blue sweatshirt on. You got light coming from a window, and that's all there is. And you and I are talking to each other, and there is nothing else. And anything you want to think about in your mind becomes well, think about things and be excited about everything, but don't bring the past to the present. And you can write screenplays of the future all you want. A second from now will never be imagined. You cannot imagine it. And that is life. And yes, that's photography. The moment. Well, sort of funny word that it entered photography's lexicon. But all there is, and all there ever has been, and all there ever will be, is this moment.
Okay, so let's go to the questions, John.
Can somebody join us in video? Because I feel like,
Yeah, let's. There's
come
been.
on, everybody, just don't worry, don't be shy. I got
The thing I'll say that there can be 10 people at the screen on the screen at the same time.
do it. Crazy.
I'll put the link if you want to join us as in the conversation, and I'll promote you then to speaker. Please use the link that I just posted. I have here a question from Renaud Philippe. He's our alumni from Canada. He's asking that he didn't get the information about the couple that has been murdered in Brazil protesting next to their land. Where was that? Which community? I know Renaud is currently publishing a book. He's been very engaged in documenting this kind of things as well in Brazil. So I think this is why the question.
Yeah. So is he asking, how did I find out about this, or is it in the connection to the person that he's saying is making a documentary? I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding the question.
No, he's asking where was it in Brazil and which was the community that they were part of.
I got to go into Lightroom. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do it in passion and love here. So hang in there. Us versus them. Hold on, digging up the. Bear with me. Hold on. It was in the Mato Grosso region, that I remember. Yeah, Mato Grosso, and they were living their land, and then they shifted across the other side of the road. That road was called. They're in the busy highway in the Mato Grosso do Sul region. Do Sul region. The exact highway is BR 463, and I may have a GPS pin mark of it, but I don't know what any of that matters. The reality is, so many people on our planet become displaced by human greed. Again, that's an act of being unconscious. And then I ran across a photographer who maybe was working on a documentary about them. It was at a Nat Geo event, maybe like a year ago, and he came up to me afterwards. Hey, I saw your presentation or whatever it was, and I just want to tell you that those two people were murdered. So again, you don't. the egoic mind enters to kill another human being with an idea that an individual or a group of individuals may have, whether it's a indoctrinated idea or a insanity idea. And I've never met anybody who's really sane when they have been killing somebody. So it really is an act of insanity that we do. And that's what happens also for things like land and greed and war. Everything about Ukraine is about greed, and yeah.
Yeah, it's Renaud was just writing. Renaud, I don't know if you can join us in the call, but Renaud saying that every week there people are murdered for
Yeah.
trying to live on the lands of their ancestors. So yeah, I know Renaud, you know this story. So like you're very engaged in this. Renaud is working with this partner. She's an anthropologist on this story for I think quite some time now. So yeah, I don't know if you want to really join and talk to John
Renoy,
in
come
person.
on, come on.
If the
Let's,
link
let's
works,
humanize things. We can be silly and serious.
you can really use this link that I shared. Ah, he's doing other stuff. Yeah. But if you want to join in the chat, there's a link to join us as speakers. So Marco Vorbic, we have a question from him here saying that towards the end of the presentation, you said something in the sense of, if I'm not raising consciousness, I'm just making bad. Few critical words about your photographs. You said before you have to hang clothes or produce bricks with your subjects before making photos. The intensity of critical tone made me think you were in doubt about your work.
I don't fully understand. Sorry, can you copy paste the question to me so that
I'll
I can?
actually, can you see it
Oh,
now?
I see the comments here. Hold on.
Yes.
Sorry, Marco. I see it here. I didn't open that pane. Towards the end of presentation, you had something in the sense of, if I'm not raising conscious, I'm not making bad. I don't think I said making bad, but anyways, few critical words about your phone. I don't feel like if I'm not raising, I'm going to go in little sections here, Marco, because I can't go back in time in what was flowing 10 minutes ago or whatever it was. Because I come from this, maybe because I come from this other background of this thing called photography, I had an awakening, a series of awakenings that I still have so much to learn. But I realized that I needed to become more conscious and using not just the imagination again of my mind, but using the enormous power of reality as a loud timpani, and sometimes really as just even a quiet flute or a triangle in the background, to raise thought and awareness as just being a conduit of information. Photographers are just a pipe. I'll use myself. I don't want to talk about everybody else. I'm just a pipe, and all I'm doing is moving like water information. You could say that, are we editorializing it? Okay, I'm going to pick up the camera I always have with me, and if I were to look this way and photograph right now, I'm editorializing, looking in this direction. There's things happening over here. There's things happening over here. There's here and here, and then there's the multidimensional universe that's happening. I'm going to distill as best I can the narratives that belong to all of us. And in that act, I hope that we can raise some consciousness. So when I go do stories specifically, and really trying to do, I did a story. Let me jump into something else that connects here, Marco. I did a story once on Mother Teresa when she was still alive. And I remember telling her, I said, "Oh, Mother Teresa, I'm going to do a story about." I'm paraphrasing here, okay? I'm going to do a story about you. I was working at the newspaper then after Europe, and I said, because I want to show people what you do, And she looked at me. She was holding a bunch of books, and she just started to laugh. She said, "John, everybody knows what I do." and I'll never forget that. And so and then she said, "Oh, you need to go here to photograph to see this, because that's going to be why you're here." Again, prefacing. So so in the act of consciousness, I want to raise consciousness because we are an unconscious group of people. Really, I don't mean to dissect it away as just only species, but we are just a living entity on this planet, sharing this planet with billions of other living entities, no different than anyone else. The difference is we have a mind. We have a tremendously powerful supercomputer that will never be replicated, much as we want to call artificial intelligence can replicate everything. It'll never enter the realm of the super duper unbelievable computer of the mind, because we have this thing called consciousness. But our species has a huge lack of consciousness. And when you photograph the madness of our inhumanity over and over and over, I felt like I am not doing what I'm here to do, because and so I no longer cover conflict, not because I'm afraid of it or anything like that. Those images need to be seen, but I want to work on stories like I'm doing right now on soil, because it connects to the environmental issues. It connects to poverty. It connects to the haves and have-nots. It connects to conflict. It connects to the insanity of our inhumanity, because we don't even are aware of the amount of life that is beneath our feet at every moment. And it connects to how we feed ourselves on this planet. And it connects again to conflict. So hold on, I'm trying to get to your question here. And so when it comes to, so I don't know if I said, if I'm just making few critical words about your photographs. Oh, I'm just making photographs. And I don't want to, I guess I am just making photographs, sure. But I'm being gifted. I'm carrying all of us are carrying the enormous responsibility of the narratives of other people's lives, other human beings' lives, before they become topsoil, because you and I are all going to become topsoil in 50 to 80 years from now. I don't give a damn how old you are. If you wake up tomorrow, it's a miracle. And be on your knees in thankfulness, because over 250,000 human beings on our planet will not wake up tomorrow. It happens every fucking day on our planet. How beautiful. And if you are not conscious about what you can do in this life, then you're missing the possibilities of doing something of meaning in this life. So now I'm going to try to, so if you wake up tomorrow, any one of us here, I'm not going to name names. If I wake up tomorrow, I am limitless, because one day I won't, and that's okay. But when I'm going to go entering the theater of our collective humanity, and if it's a labor issue like women carrying 30 kilos, or it was almost 30 kilos, it was about 20 some kilos of bricks on their heads, how can I understand how to even be in this existence around these equal fellow human beings who happen to be women, who are desperate to earn a living to feed themselves and their family, if I don't put down my barely a kilo camera to come in union with them? And I find that that's the only way I can properly give to this thing called photography, as just being a pipe that is like water, moving information to other people to make them think, I hope, dare I hope, to raise, okay, yes, some consciousness, because I'm tired of photographing all this nonsense. So I don't know. So then your question, you said the intensity of critical tone made me think you were in doubt of your work. I'm not in doubt of anything. I am fascinated by everything. I question, but not in a negative way. I question, am I doing enough? So when I was just in India working on the soil story, making portraits, which I reminded me of my past life, and when I go to California in a few days, I will question, how can I see further so that I'm giving to the purpose of the story and to the purpose of my existence. Because you and I, whoever's still here, I have no idea, so that you and I can give in the maximumness as possible, because otherwise it's just a photograph. And everyone and their dog can make photographs, and they always have been able to make photographs. Elfrida, the Great Dane over here, I can put a camera around her neck that pushes the camera shutter every 5 seconds. And if she makes enough images, we could probably make a book out of it, and it'll look really, really interesting. So everyone and their dog can make pictures, and it's always been that way. And I'd actually love to see the pictures of our dogs that they would make. So where I said early in the beginning that photography of recent, including my own, I'll use me, forget anybody else. I'm bored with my photography, not because I'm bored with photography, but I know that there's more. And I have to go inside myself to raise more consciousness within myself, so that when I look through the camera, and I do this now all the time, if I'm seeing something I've seen before, and it happens a lot, I put the camera down and go, John, you've done this before. It becomes like you're making sausages. I can make sausages. Any one of us here can make brilliant sausages. My sausages are going to be made out of plants. I don't care, what you want to make your sausages out of, but I can make sausages, and I can make flavor-filled sausages, and you can make flavor-filled sausages. I want us all to raise our consciousness and our awareness to make sausages that we've never tasted before, never seen before, so that we change the narrative of our planet. So I don't know, Marco, if I answered your question or supported your question or anything, but I hope that helped. Who wrote here? I won't be able to get it, but
Actually,
John. Yeah.
yeah, we have now two that join us here. So Anurab was the first to join us. So I'll just promote you, Anurab, as a speaker, and then Joya after that. I'll remove myself and I'll add them.
Hi, John. First of all,
Hey,
thank you for this amazing. Am I audible?
I hear you, baby. I hear you. And I even see your
Okay.
baseball cap on backwards.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you for this amazing presentation. Like, this means a lot to me because I have been following your work since I was a child. I mean, like, I'm from a very small city in India, and there's
Where,
just one newsstand in my
where,
city.
where in India? Where in
It,
India?
it's in Northeast India,
Where in Northeast India?
Tripura, Tripura.
What's it near? Is it in like Assam state or where?
Yeah, no, Tripura is a state itself. It's bordering Bangladesh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay,
So
continue.
there used to be just one newsstand, and I used to go there to pick my Nat Geo magazine. And I remember knowing you from there, and then I started following your work. So it's a privilege to hear from you.
It's a
Okay.
privilege that you are here. That's what matters even more.
Yeah. Right now, I'm doing a workshop with Seven. So I'm actually in Assam right now doing a project for Seven's workshop.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
it's about a pollution. It's about a city called Burnihat. It's the most polluted city in the world right now. So I'm trying to make something out of it and trying
Okay.
to reflect on the issues people are facing here. So anyway, I have a question for you. So it's regarding how, like, you have done so many projects for so many organizations, and I have found myself in a very hard situation when I have to like narrow down a big idea, like how you did the malaria work, going to multiple countries. So malaria is a huge subject, right? So when you go to a country like India, when you come to a country like India, and then you photograph these people in their house, and then you go to the Dhobi Ghat, and then you photograph there. So how do you narrow down your subjects? Like, how do you narrow down that? Okay, these are my priority shots, or these are my priority characters. I have to go and follow them. So how do you narrow down? Because malaria is a huge subject.
So very good question. And walk with me as I attempt to humanize it. For the malaria story, and if you're looking at it in a global level, but you would do this in a local single country level and or even on the village level to some extent. So for malaria, we looked at different aspects in different parts of the world. And for India, for example, we looked at urban malaria, malaria in a concrete jungle. And I'm going to come back to India. I didn't include it here. We went to Peru in South America for human-made malaria. What happens when a highway, humans make a road, asphalt, into the Amazon jungle, bringing people into an untouched part of the forest, where mosquitoes, because the cut trees find puddles of water that now have access to the sun, that incubates more mosquitoes, that causes spread of malaria. That's development, right? What happens when humans create malaria. Tanzania was solutions, because Tanzania and the people of Tanzania are really active in mosquito and malaria prevention. And then what happens in the most highest levels of malaria on Earth? And at the time it was Zambia. So we look at it in different chapters, in different pieces. So you build the narrative laterally and not on top of each other. So now in India, I knew it was urban malaria. It's concrete. I chose Calcutta because I love Calcutta, one of my favorite cities in India. And I've been to your magical country maybe 15, 20 times. I was just there a week ago for nearly a month. And
Should have known.
yeah, I didn't do much posting on. I was hosting a workshop, and then I stayed a week longer and went to South India to work on the soil story. We were in Benares, Kashi, or Varanasi.
Yeah, I have seen the post about your workshop there. It's pretty expensive of a workshop, but then it was good, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was full on intensity for 10 days. But anyway, so and I can show you, I'll be vulnerable. I hope people are interested here or still here. Did I do this right? Oh, I got to touch this. Oh, entire screen. Here we go. Oh, I hear a rickshaw horn.
Yeah.
So India, is my screen sharing? Is it sharing the screen?
No,
Can you
at
see
the
this?
moment.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
I'll edit.
Now?
I'll edit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you everything, but we won't go into it, all of it. Malaria. I think I was only there for like 8 days, 10 days. But I knew right away. I went to this is where malaria was detected, that it came from a mosquito. It's the Ronald Ross Center. It's like nothing pictures. I'm willing to show you what it is. just weirdness. What causes malaria in a urban society? Running water, right? This is definitely prevalent, not all over in India, but definitely in Calcutta, where people even to this day do their laundry, bathe at water on the street. And so these puddles of water create a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes. I would never want to run this in the magazine, but I'm wandering around looking. This puddle at a development project where the laborers and squatters are living, this puddle creates a perfect breeding ground for malaria. So I look at it this way. I go back to the Ronald Ross Center next day, just hanging out. And this is the room where this, foreigner guy, British guy, Ronald Ross, discovered malaria came from mosquitoes. And amazingly, he is on the wall with a garland. And, you try to make something out of nothing because you're in this room, and magically everything sort of comes into layers. I'll show you the making of it. I'm sitting here photographing it. I can see what's happening. I don't move a lot when I photograph. I can feel the space. And I feel the dimensional space, and I just wait for the universe to present. Here it is. The guy's there in the back, comes in, boom, boom, touches the glass, looks at it, done, and it's over with. Right. And then I just stop. I don't look at the back of my camera. Never look at the back of your camera. And so let me jump ahead here. So to try to answer your question, then I would do like prevention. running water. I love this blue light, the ambassador, which no longer are on the streets of Calcutta, at least as taxis. And then they come and water canals, right? All these puddles become a perfect breeding ground for malaria. And then I reached out to the government entity that does mosquito control in the areas, and they're just walking around spraying in people's homes. It's just crazy. So you just go and you try to turn over stones, and then this is that family. And immediately I noticed this woman in the mirror. That's a mirror. And everybody in this room had malaria, including this woman in the mirror. It's just sort of astonishing. Another person's home, or he's got malaria. So you partner, with I was working with some local NGO or that does outreach to malaria patients. And I didn't spend a lot of time there because I had to maybe like 8 days. Again, the perpetual running water that creates a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes. And then I was reading in the newspaper, I think it was the Times of India. There was a story in the paper, really small, how the laundry wallas at this little lake on the outskirts of Calcutta, their activity of doing laundry was creating the perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes because it would leave puddles on the sand. So I go there, and here, I'll show you all of it. I photographed this boy begging from me, and I go there. First picture is this, and we could run this. We could publish this. This is, again, I can make sausages. When Marco and others were asking what I meant, and I'm not critical of my work. I'm wanting to be more conscious, so I'm questioning my work. These are frame after frame, unedited. We don't delete anything on a story for National Geographic. All of this is publishable. Today, I don't usually tilt the camera so much. There was a funny phase I was doing. And then I started to notice this. Like, oh, okay. You try to turn something, nothing into something. And then I found these things, and then these white shirts, and I don't let go. I mean, well, I didn't really photograph that much, but everybody comes into union, and it makes this picture where everybody's in the right place. And then I leave. And so this is how I do this, just trying to show you some background. Oh, the people who are hired by the city to clean the drainage gutters, drainage canals, and the sewers, because this again is a breeding ground for malaria. People who use the water bucket bowls at people's homes. People who use goldfish in their water to have them eat the larvae, have the fish eat the larvae of the mosquitoes. Then I just was driving and I saw this bridge and I wanted to make a picture of it to highlight population density. And then police wanted to arrest me because I forgot that you can't photograph all of bridges. And then
I just have one. Sorry for cutting you in between. I just have a follow-up question regarding that fish.
I'll stop sharing.
The goldfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the goldfish in that house. So how do you get the information about a house where they are actually using goldfish or some kind of fish like that?
So when you do your story that you're doing, or any story that you're doing with anybody here who's still here, you do some research. I can show you the folder that I have for soil extinction, which is a global story. Unbelievable amounts of story links and whatnot that I read every day. Not every day, but that I read certain news alerts every day from Google and what have you. And so you know something, you know what you think is a lot, and then you actually know nothing. Okay, you know nothing, and that's the power of it. So we had known that certain people doing research use fish in their stagnant water buckets in Kolkata and in other parts of India. That was introduced by an NGO to help. So I was wandering around. I forget the names that you call communities. I know it in another language, but whatever. in the village, the communities, and suddenly rounding a turn, I remember this. I looked, I'm like, oh my God, there's goldfish in there. Oh, the light went off. Oh, this is one of these. It's not like somebody found it. It's like it's that I knew kind of about it, and the universe presented it to me because I was, walk with me here, I was expecting nothing, and I was thankful for everything. So when you have an idea so locked in your head, all you're doing is focusing on that. You're not going to pay attention to everything else. You're going to be, but the universe of possibilities is everywhere. And so be focused and do your research on your story, but don't think like you have to have a photography list or a check mark. Okay, I got that. Okay, I got that. No, you do that, you might as well, be a cookie cutter machine, making the same damn cookies over and over, and making some with chocolate chips and making some with nuts. And that's all you're doing. You want to be informed about why you're there. You want to be excited and enlightened by why you're there, and giving and giddy as a child about everything. But be curious and put it only in the back of your mind, and be open to everything, and then you will find the goldfish in the water. And
Got
then
it.
when you find goldfish in the water, and you are not an underwater photographer like David Dubélé or or anybody
Paul
else,
Nicklin.
Paul Nicklin, you suddenly go, oh shit, I don't have an underwater camera. How do I do this? You go then around the corner, you find an aquarium store, you buy a 5-gallon fish aquarium, you put your camera in the fish aquarium, and you lower the aquarium into the water, and then you become David Dubélé and Paul Nicklin and Christina Minnemeyer.
Yeah.
In
Thank you so much.
a container of water with goldfish that connects to malaria. But you can't
Wow.
imagine these things. So get the information that you can, give to the information that you can, be open to everything that there is, and you will never imagine the possibilities, because the power of reality, which is what I didn't learn in art school because I was too caught up in my head, and the photographers that were teaching photojournalism were like super minimalist in all their kindness thinking. You will find that even what you imagine will never come close to the magnitude of incredibleness of even these trees outside the window right now that are moving in the wind. I've seen it before, and we're supposed to have wind heavy later in a few hours.
John, sorry to cut you in between. My mobile is at 1%
Go,
charge,
darling,
so I
go.
might.
Namaskaram. Be beautiful.
Oh
Gioia.
shit!
How do I say your beautiful name? Gioia?
Sorry, Joya. Yeah, I didn't know I
Joya.
was.
Wow, you're
I was
joy. You
Yeah,
are
hi.
joy.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, you said, oh, please. I don't know if anybody's watching still. So I just wanted to say, yes, we are.
Oh, well, you're very kind to be here. You're giving a lot of clock time to me going blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but this has been delightful because I'm absolutely loving this from Seven. This is very different from many of the other things that I've engaged with. I heard about you from Jake Borden. I did a program with
Jakey
him. Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did a program with him with Seven in Poland.
Oh,
And
beautiful. Oh, that's right.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, so
Jacek
I'm
was
just
there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Stefano, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Stefano, of course.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say I'm so thankful because what you're talking about, I totally believe that we are at this dawning of a new consciousness, and that many of us are up leveling, or whatever, however you want to perceive that consciousness level. And I perceive that's really what you're going for. When I hear you're bored with photography, I mean, like, oh man, look at those diagonals of this and that. And I mean, I love the composition of so many of your photographs, but I'm not taking that as a slight. I'm thinking about how do you find, I mean, you've had some amazing platforms, And as I mean, I'm older, but I have not been able to avail myself of those kind of platforms. That's been one of the struggles of what I've done, and I've done tons of things. And the reason why I turned to photography was really in picking up on your magic idea was because I've done other art forms, but you create those out of your head. And to me, the fact that when you're photographing and you're photographing reality, wow, it is magic. I mean, that image on the beaches and people trying to, reach their loved ones in Europe, that is incredible. It doesn't even need a subtitle. But how do you propose that we come together? I mean, because I think that's what it really is all about. How do you propose that we come together more, and people who don't have outlets, and what do you propose for us? I mean, I believe in the togetherness and I believe in the consciousness raising, but how do you see it manifesting?
Beautiful. Well, I, it's already there.
Mhm.
It's already, and it has been for a while. What you're feeling is maybe becoming more articulated, more by a greater percentage of our humans. There's an awakening that instead of sending our wishes and prayers to the sky, because if you're on the other side of the planet, you're looking in the wrong direction. We're sending our prayers and our wishes inward. Doesn't mean that this, if not to get religious and spiritual here, but doesn't mean that this thing called God doesn't exist. It's just instead of projecting outward, there's becoming a more projecting inward, and that raises consciousness as well. To your question of platforms, I'm presuming you're saying platforms like National Geographic or publications or whatever. I build my platforms, let's say. I started Seven. It was Gary Knight and I 20 some years ago, 25 years ago. I build things, and I build things, and some things sustain themselves, other things don't. And people come and join me in the building of it, and then we grow bigger with it, and more magic happens. How do we? So that's how and I never give up. I'm not a Viking I don't climb mountains. Like I'm not going to give up climbing Everest until I get to the mountain. No, I don't do that. But I see Everest and I go, I can get there.
Mhm.
How I get there is the journey.
Mhm.
And I probably won't go on the path that everybody takes to get to Everest. And I probably will be my own Sherpa because the ideas are so stretched that nobody's going to believe me. And then you find a few people that will walk with you. Gary Knight was Seven, and Chris Morris, and 5 others that made up the number 7 and became the name. And I said the number 7 should be a Roman numeral, and that's how it happened. And the collectiveness of that is the in similarities possibility of the collectiveness of our collective humanity to go internally, whether you're a photographer, a farmer, a porn star, I don't care what the hell you do, just do it in absolute brilliance, in absolute unrelenting kindness, though, in unrelenting, giving to the greater possibility that resides inside of us, not outside of us, but what resides inside of us. Because the outside forces are not going to be what move us. What moves us and grows the seed of an idea or the passion or the fire or the energy is what emanates from within us. Because everything is radiating fire, energy, and passion. You just have to feel it most of the time our minds are too cluttered in internal thoughts, having conversations with nobody other than ourselves, unable to even be in union with the tree outside the window or this napkin next to me, paying attention and being amazed by the shadows of it and everything else. How do we collectively, how do you reach a platform? The platform is you. And the platform are the myriad of platforms that we have given to us. We're not going to start magazines today. We can. We started photo agencies. Gary took this thing further and turned it into a foundation, a non-for-profit, an education, which is why you're here, why we're all talking together in union with each other. We are utilizing a platform. I've never met you, and yet I've known you before you and I were even existing, and everyone else on this call. We all knew each other because we are inside of each other. And that awareness is manifesting because we're realizing that projecting outward isn't changing anything. That's where I am tired of photographing the same madness. I have to go inward in order to go out. And I'm seeing others, not everybody yet, we have a lot of work to do, to raise consciousness so that we must start within ourselves to see beyond the composition, the lines. You and I can make these things like making Happy Meal toys. I can do it almost blindfolded. And maybe do it better if I was blindfolded, because I'd want that challenge. How do you get to Everest? I'm going to, get Everest through a back road and through a tunnel and, maybe even jump around to get there. That is where collectively we can utilize platforms that you give to. We were really big, and I'm not doing as much as I should anymore because of this terrible thing called algorithms, but Instagram was an amazing platform, still kind of is. Substack is proving to be a really interesting platform to communicate because we are the publishers today. You can go and work for magazines, but majority of the work I'm getting today are grants. And I'm thankful, and I'm thankful for any assignment that I have, but I don't do one-day assignments, not because I don't do one-day assignments. No, but I live in a rural area in the mountains of Western Massachusetts in an area called the Berkshires. And I want to live here in nature and be 2 hours from New York City if I want to partake in all of that. I also want a lifestyle that doesn't force me to have to do every project. And I know how to live blissfully and peacefully on a simple income that allows me to do the work I want to do. I share that so that you can be anywhere on our planet, whether it's our kind friend from near Assam State, near the Bangladeshi India border, or here in the Berkshires, or wherever you are at this moment with paintings behind you, photographs behind you, and a big pink and yellow pillow, the platforms are there. They are powerful. They're Substack, they're OKX, they're all those things, but they are whatever it is that you have that energy inside of you to manifest. And you and everyone here does not know. You can say whatever hell age you are. There is no such thing as time. There's no such thing as age. There is only this moment, and what you are going to do in this moment is what you give to it. So how do we become in union with it? Let's collaborate and get everybody who's still here to do a joint project together. VII is doing 6x6 or 2x6, something that was started by my friend Ed Cashy, of looking at communities together, and now a group of photographers who some were with VII, some were not with VII, are doing this 6x6 or 2x6 or whatever, looking at the aging population around our planet. So you don't have to be a part of VII. You don't have to be a part of anything. You have to be a part of our collective humanity and say, oh, I see this mountain. It's big. It could be Everest. It could be bigger than Everest. Let's make it bigger than Everest. And we're going to go walk up that mountain blissfully, sufferingly, but in peaceful suffering of it. And we're going to do what we can to tell the stories that belong and unite all of us. And in the act of doing that, let's raise greater consciousness or awareness or understanding, whatever word you want to use. I don't care. They're all the same. Because we need to rewrite the history of our planet. Not the history of our planet, but we need to rewrite the narrative of our planet. And because the narrative that we've been writing, we have enough reference points in this thing called journalism, in this thing called the written word, in this thing called photography and films, that shows that we are repeating the same thing over and over and over. And you can design and compose the most beautiful picture of incessant brutality, and that's great, and think you as a photographer, oh, I did this great picture, and give me all the awards and everything else. All that is just like putting butter all over yourself of self-importance, especially when you're dealing in the excessive power and the excessive insanity and the excessive beauty of reality.
Wow. Thank you. This has been like the best. I mean, I love the 7 things, but this is really getting to the heart of the matter. So I am just so thrilled that this comes through, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have.
Well,
but
thank you for being here, and whoever's here, I can't see you, but I can feel you.
God bless.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joya, for joining us as well. It's always a pleasure to see you. I know now with these new platforms, we don't get to see that often, but it's nice to see all of you. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, 7 has been really, really, really wonderful. I mean, I think it's amazing how you bring people together. So, and this is just one example of it. And it is an amazing platform. So long live whatever we are on, StreamYard, right?
Tomorrow, a million possibilities. We don't know.
New ways. Telepathy will replace a lot of them too.
You be well.
All right. Likewise.
Thank you, Joya. I'll have to slowly wrap this up because it's already 2 hours and a half. So we're around 30 minutes past the time. But yeah, I would just like to apologize, everyone, if we did not answer your questions. Let me see. There's no questions in the comments. So I think Monon, if you have a short question, I'll add you to stage. John, if you're fine still with the 5 minutes, maybe.
I
For
don't
one.
care. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to stay on here. Oh, here he goes, Manon.
Manon is yes.
Hi,
Manon, you're a big circle.
yeah, because here there is no such light, so not good light, so that's why I didn't turn on my camera. And also, today was a very rainy day and thunderstorm, so the network is little bad, so that's why I turned off my camera. I don't have any question actually, particularly John. I just want to thank you, and I was so moved by watching your work, and I felt like I didn't even start yet. Uh, I didn't. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's like you're talking to me in another room, but I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Sorry for the
No, you're good. You're good. It's technology. You're on the planet, and we're talking to each other, and you're not in the other room. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm from Bangladesh, by the way.
Oh, Bangladesh.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
you came here once,
Yes.
and I want to invite you to come here again so that we can have
Uh,
face-to-face conversation over tea, Bangladeshi tea.
I would love to come and be there and see Shahidul and go to Dirk. And it's been a while, but I know one day I will be there soon.
Yeah, sure. And not everybody comes and meets Shahidul, not us, but me and other my fellow photographers here who actually adore your work, and they actually would love to see you in
Let's
person.
do it. I just need to give my salams to Shahidul, and then I go hang out and have Bangladeshi tea with you.
Okay. Thank you, John. And yeah, I wrote it down that you said we don't have to belong anywhere. We are actually collective humans. So
That's
that's
all we are.
yeah,
I'm
that's
your
my
brother and you're my sister. We're just separated by about, I don't know how many breeding cycles, but the only thing that causes a separation is the weakness of the mind to find indifference.
So I was kind of going through like I stuck somewhere. I couldn't like start my new project, but today's session was actually really a kick for me. So thank you so much for showing all of this amazing work, and I am really inspired. And I have no question, but I'm really inspired and hope to see you in person. Uh,
It will happen, Manon. I'm sure it will. You be
Definitely.
wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John, and keep doing whatever you are doing. And God bless you and lots of good wishes. Thank you, Nika. Thank you so much.
Endless goodness to you too.
Thank you, Manon. Yeah, thank you so much, Manon, for joining. Thank you, John, obviously, for all your time. You're always so generous. We've had in the comments, if you've seen, so much gratitude from our community. So yeah, in the name of all, I would really like to thank you again. Um, and
Well,
yeah, let's hope for another session in the future. We're always really inspired to listen to you, so we appreciate it.